3 kids. And when my oldest boy was 3 years old, he wasn't speaking. I'll never forget the time my wife could tell you about it. She remembers taking him home from his vaccination appointment, and now this bright-eyed young boy would follow you around the room. Now it was in his crib, and it had a glazed over look. He had a dulled over look. He couldn't even follow you at that point. He was just silent, and he was 3 years old, and he wasn't even speaking at this point. Walked into the doctor's office, and that doctor looked at my wife and I and said, "Your son is on the autistic spectrum, and he'll never be in a regular classroom. He'll never play on a regular sports team, and he'll never travel more than a couple of miles away from the house." And it was like a punch in the gut. It was that moment where you say, "But God, I've been serving you, and I've been lifting up my hands, and I'm preaching, and I'm teaching, and I'm worshiping, and we're tithing." What happens when bad news comes, even when you're serving God? It's one thing you can rationalize in your mind, well, trouble came because of my actions. What happens when you're serving God wholeheartedly and trouble still comes your way? In that moment, I wish I could tell you that I was the priest of my home, and I wish I could tell you that I was the man of God I was supposed to be in that moment. And that moment, I was devastated. The Bible says of David in 1 Samuel 30 that when he came to Ziklag, him and his men wept till there was no more tears to weep. There's a weeping that doesn't come from up here, it comes from in here. There's a weeping that comes from your belly. There's a weeping that comes from a place you cannot articulate. And yet I'm thankful for the God who reads tears. That even when I cannot articulate my praying, he understands what I'm facing, and he understands. And there was a moment where in that I found my strength in the Lord my God. My weeping had come to an end, and now the declaration of that doctor became the stiffening of my backbone. And I just remembered in that moment, whose report are you going to believe? I just remembered in that moment that your report's not the last report. I will strike the ground until my knuckles are bloody. I will strike the ground until, God, you either show up with a miracle or you snatch the breath from my lungs. But here's what it won't be. A lack of passion will not define me. You see, when your back is up against the wall, you have a choice. You will strike the ground again, or you will choose to lay down and let whatever they said be what it'll be, but that won't be me. You see, for my wife and I in that moment, it was, I will strike the ground again. Let me tell you something this morning. You might have come to church and your marriage might have been on the rocks, and I came to remind you, you're to strike the ground again. Your children might be spinning out of control, but today's the day to strike the ground again. The doctor might have said, it got worse since the last time you prayed. Today's the day to strike the ground again. But Pastor Adam, you don't know what I'm going through. I don't have to know what you're going through. Today's the day to strike the ground again.